The distress beacon had been pulsing for 3 standard cycles before Command finally authorized our rescue mission. 3 cycles. In deep space terms, that might as well be 3 eternities, but here we were, the Valtorian rescue vessel Meridian's Hope, approaching the wreckage of what our scanners identified as a cargo hauler from Earth. Captain Vorn, my second officer, Kelix, chirped from his station, his silver carapace gleaming under the bridge lights. The ship's hull integrity is, well, it's basically shredded. I'm honestly shocked the beacon still works. I clicked my mandibles in acknowledgement, studying the twisted metal carcass floating in the void. The vessel looked like it had kissed an asteroid field at full speed, then decided to go back for seconds. Scorch marks suggested multiple engine failures, and the starboard side was simply gone. Just gone. As in, not there anymore. Life signs? I asked, though I already knew the answer would disappoint me. Kelix adjusted his scanner, those compound eyes of his narrowing in concentration. That's the weird part, sir. I'm getting 1 reading. Just 1. But it's odd. Odd how? It's human, definitely. But the thermal signature is surrounded by approximately 47 smaller readings. They're clustered in what looks like the cargo bay. He paused, antennae twitching nervously. The smaller ones register as KRWNTH. Every spine on my body stood rigid. KRWNTH. The galaxy's most efficient apex predators. 6-limbed killing machines with teeth designed by whatever cruel deity thought the universe needed more nightmares. Adult KRWNTH had been known to tear through reinforced battle armor like it was tissue paper. You're telling me, I said slowly, carefully, that there's 1 human in a cargo bay with 47 KRWNTH? Yes, sir. And the human is still alive? Apparently so, sir. I exchanged glances with my tactical officer, a bulky Thronite named Gurk, who simply shrugged his 4 shoulders in a gesture that clearly said, "Your guess is as good as mine, boss." All right, I sighed, already regretting every decision that led me to this moment. Prep the boarding team. Full combat gear. Energy weapons set to maximum. If those KRWNTH are adults, we're going to need everything we've got. 12 minutes later, I was leading a team of 6 through the airlock, magnetic boots clanging against the dead ship's hull. The interior was dark, lit only by emergency strips that flickered like they were having seizures. The air was still breathable, surprisingly, though it smelled like burnt electronics and something organic that I really didn't want to identify. Stay tight, I whispered into the comm weapons ready. Remember, KRWNTH can move in 0 gravity better than most species can move on solid ground. We crept through the corridors, our helmet lights cutting through the darkness. The ship was eerily quiet except for the occasional groan of stressed metal. Doors hung at odd angles. Personal belongings floated past us like ghosts of the crew that should have been here, should have been. Captain, whispered Mira, our medical specialist, a Yenith with 4 eyes that could see in almost total darkness. There's no blood. No bodies. Nothing. She was right. A ship this damaged, with a crew that had clearly abandoned it in a hurry, should have shown signs of violence or panic. Instead, it looked like everyone had simply evaporated, reached the cargo bay doors, and I could hear something on the other side. A chittering sound. The distinctive click-clack of KRWNTH claws on metal. My primary heart started beating faster, and my secondary heart kicked in for good measure. On 3, I mouthed, gripping my plasma rifle. 1. 2. 3. Gurk slammed the manual override, and the doors screeched open. The cargo bay was massive, easily 50 meters across, and it was crawling with KRWNTH. 47 of them, just like Kelix said. They turned toward us as one, dozens of eyes reflecting our lights, and I nearly fired on instinct, then I actually looked at them. They were cubs. Babies. The largest one was maybe knee-high, with oversized paws and those endearingly large eyes that predator young always seem to have. They chirped at us, curious but not aggressive, their movements clumsy and uncoordinated, and in the center of this furry, deadly-in-training swarm sat a human. She was young, maybe in her mid-20s by human standards, with dark skin and hair pulled back in a messy knot. She wore a torn jumpsuit with a name patch that read Davis. One arm was in a makeshift sling, and she had a nasty bruise across her forehead, but she was alive. More than alive. She was smiling. A KRWNTH cub, this one with silver-tipped fur, was currently trying to climb into her lap while another gnawed on her boot. A third had somehow gotten tangled in her hair. "Oh, thank the void," Davis said, her voice hoarse but relieved. I was starting to think nobody got the beacon. I lowered my weapon, completely at a loss for words. My team stood frozen behind me, equally dumbfounded. I started, then stopped. The KRWNTH cubs. "You're babysitting?" she offered, gently untangling the cub from her hair. "Yeah, I guess that's one way to put it." But Krynth are apex predators. They're dangerous. They're G-cubs, she interrupted, scratching one behind what I assumed were its ear equivalents. It made a purring sound that I'd never heard from a Krynth in my entire career. They're babies. Sure, their mom was terrifying, but these little guys? They're harmless. Their mother, I repeated, my spine's trying to stand up again. Where is their mother? Davis's expression fell, and genuine sadness crossed her face. She didn't make it. We hit the asteroid field hard, and she was in the wrong section when it decompressed. By the time I found these guys, she was already gone. She gestured around the cargo bay. This was her den. She was being transported to a conservation planet. These cubs are endangered, apparently. Mira stepped forward cautiously, her medical scanner out. Ma'am, you're injured. We need to get you to our ship. I know, Davis said, wincing as she tried to stand. Two cubs immediately protested, wrapping their multiple limbs around her legs. But we can't leave them. They're too young to survive on their own, and they've been through enough trauma already. I clicked my mandibles in disbelief. This human had survived a catastrophic ship failure, was surrounded by predators, had serious injuries, and her primary concern was the welfare of creatures that could theoretically tear her throat out in a few months. You've been caring for them, I said, not quite a question. Someone had to, she replied, as if it were the most obvious thing in the galaxy. They were scared and hungry. I managed to get into the emergency supplies and found formula that's close enough to what they need. Been keeping them warm, keeping them calm. She smiled again. Though it looked exhausted. Telling them really terrible jokes. Cubs love terrible jokes, apparently. Gurk made a rumbling sound that might have been a laugh. How long have you been alone with them? Since the crash, so about 3 cycles now. Davis counted on her fingers. Yeah, 3 cycles of changing tiny murder mittens into less murdery mittens. Do you know how much baby Krynth eat? Because I do. Intimately. It's horrifying. The rest of the crew? I asked gently, her face went carefully neutral. Escape pods launched before the worst of it. I was in the cargo section checking on the animals when we hit the field. By the time I got to the pod bay, they were all gone. She shrugged, trying to look nonchalant and failing. Emergency bulkhead sealed, and here I stayed. You were abandoned, Kellex said quietly. They probably thought I was already dead, Davis replied, though something in her voice suggested she didn't entirely believe that. A small cub, this one with unusual black markings, chirped loudly and headbutted my leg. I looked down at it, and it looked up at me with those enormous eyes, and I felt my resolve crumbling like a destroyed cargo hauler. We're taking all of you, I announced, earning surprised looks from my team. The human and the cubs. We'll transport them to the conservation planet together. Davis's eyes widened. Really? All of them? That's 47 very energetic, very messy cubs. I'm aware, I said dryly. Do you have them organized somehow, or is it complete chaos? She laughed, actually laughed, and started pointing. That's Chomper, she likes to bite everything. That's Tumble, he hasn't quite figured out all 6 legs yet. The silver one is Duchess because she acts like she owns everything. The black-marked one sniffing your leg is Shadow, and you named all 47 of them? Mira asked, incredulous. I had 3 cycles, Davis said defensively. What else was I going to do? Human. This was so perfectly, absurdly human. Stranded on a dying ship, injured, alone, and she'd spent her time naming and caring for infant predators instead of panicking or giving up. This was exactly why humans had such a strange reputation in the galaxy. Getting 47 Krynth cubs and 1 stubborn human onto the Meridian's Hope turned out to be significantly more complicated than any rescue operation I'd trained for. And I'd trained for hostage situations, hull breaches, even once for extracting a dignitary from a sentient black hole. Nobody, and I mean nobody, had prepared me for hurting baby apex predators through zero gravity. No, Chomper, that's not food, Davis called out as one of the cubs tried to gnaw on Kellex's antenna. Sorry, she thinks everything is edible. Kellex, to his credit, simply sighed and gently detached the cub, handing it to Gurk, who now had 4 cubs clinging to his massive frame like furry ornaments. He looked simultaneously annoyed and weirdly pleased about it. He'd fashioned makeshift carriers from cargo netting and emergency blankets, creating pouches that we could transport the cubs in. They seemed to enjoy it, chirping and playing with each other as we made our way back through the damaged corridors. Davis insisted on walking despite her injuries, though Mira stayed close enough to catch her if she stumbled. You know, I said as we navigated a particularly twisted section of hallway, most species would have panicked in your situation. Davis snorted, adjusting the 3 cubs she was carrying in her makeshift sling. Oh, I definitely panicked. Spent the first hour crying in a corner while these guys screamed for their mom. But then Duchess, she wouldn't stop wailing, and I figured I could either sit there feeling sorry for myself or do something useful. She smiled down at the silver cub. Turns out, baby predators aren't that different from any other babies. They need food, warmth, and someone to tell them it's going to be okay. Even if you weren't sure it would be? Mira asked softly. Especially then, Davis replied. They didn't need my fear. They had enough of their own. We finally reached the Meridian's hope, and I immediately regretted not warning my crew. The ship's botanical specialist, a plant-based Floresian named Petal, took one look at the parade of cubs and promptly fainted. Well, the plant equivalent of fainting, which involved wilting dramatically across 2 chairs. Captain, my chief engineer, a nervous scrit named Bix, squeaked from the engine room door. Captain, are those Krynth? Baby Krynth? On our ship? Very observant, Bix, I said, depositing my carrier of cubs in the cargo hold we'd hastily converted into a temporary nursery. They're coming with us to the conservation planet. Make sure environmental controls are optimal for their species. But sir, they'll grow up, Bix protested, wringing his tiny paws together. They'll become apex predators. They'll grow up somewhere else, I assured him. We're just providing transport. Now, can you adjust the gravity in here to 0.8 standard? Their development requires slightly lower gravity. While my crew scrambled to accommodate our unexpected passengers, Davis worked with Mira in the medical bay. I watched through the observation window as the humans stubbornly refused treatment until Mira agreed to check on each of the cubs first. Her arms definitely fractured, Mira reported later, joining me in my ready room. 3 cracked ribs, severe bruising, dehydration, and exhaustion. She should be in critical care. But she won't stay there, I guessed. She says the cubs need her, Mira confirmed, her 4 eyes blinking in sequence. And honestly, Captain, she might be right. I've been monitoring their stress levels, and they're significantly calmer when she's nearby. She's become their pack mother. I rubbed my temples, feeling a headache forming behind my primary eyes. How long to the conservation planet? For standard days at current speed. 4 days. 4 days with 47 increasingly active Krynth cubs and 1 human who'd somehow decided they were her responsibility. This was either going to be the most interesting voyage of my career or the one that finally made me retire. Turned out to be both. Day 2 started with Chomper escaping the nursery and ending up in the galley, where she discovered that our cook, a temperamental Graxian named Voss, kept live protein pods for fresh meals. By the time we found her, she'd freed all of them and was cheerfully chasing them around the kitchen while Voss screamed threats in 3 different languages. Davis arrived, arm freshly casted, and simply scooped up Chomper like it was the most normal thing in the galaxy. Bad girl, she said, not unkindly. We don't steal other people's food. She looked at Voss. I'm really sorry. She's teething. Teething, Voss sputtered, his gill slits flaring. That creature released my entire week's supply of protein. I'll help you catch them, Davis offered, tucking Chomper under her good arm. And maybe you could show me what you're feeding my crew. I could probably prepare the cubs formula in here, save you the trouble of me constantly using the emergency processors. Somehow, impossibly, Voss calmed down. By the end of the day, he was teaching Davis about Graxian cuisine while she showed him efficient ways to prepare Krynth formula. I passed by the galley that evening to find them working side by side, with Chomper sleeping peacefully in a storage bin lined with towels. Day 3 brought a new crisis. Shadow, the black-marked cub, fell ill. High fever, lethargy, refusing to eat. Davis found him and immediately brought him to Mira, her face pale with worry. He's not responding to standard treatments, Mira said, her scanners humming frantically. I don't have enough data on juvenile Krynth physiology. Their medical database is restricted, conservation protocols. Then we get the data, Davis said firmly, already moving toward the communications station. Someone must know. Someone has to. She spent 6 hours on subspace channels, contacting conservation authorities, wildlife experts, even a retired xenobiologist who specialized in predator species. She refused to sleep, refused to leave Shadow's side, and argued with bureaucrats who insisted the information was classified until they finally relented. The treatment was simple once we knew what to do. A mineral supplement that Shadow wasn't getting from the formula, something his mother would have provided naturally. Within hours, he was chirping again, and Davis finally collapsed in a chair, tears streaming down her face. Thank you, she whispered to Mira, to me, to anyone listening. Thank you. You saved him, Mira said gently. Your persistence, your refusal to give up. He's just a baby, Davis replied, stroking Shadow's fur as he slept. They're all just babies. They deserve someone who fights for them. By day 4, the entire crew had somehow become invested in the cubs' welfare. Kelix created a game using light patterns that the cubs loved chasing. Gurk built climbing structures from spare parts. Even Bix, who'd been terrified at first, started a betting pool on which cub would learn to coordinate all 6 legs first. My money was on Tumble. Ironically enough, Davis moved through the ship like a tired but determined force of nature, checking on cubs, helping crew members who'd volunteered for feeding shifts, and somehow still finding time to repair systems on the damaged sections we'd salvaged from her original ship. She worked with engineering to save personal logs, family photos, anything that might help identify the crew who'd left her behind. "You don't owe them anything," I told her, finding her in the salvage bay late one night. "I know," she said quietly, carefully extracting a data core. "But their families deserve to know what happened. Deserve to have these memories." She looked at me with those tired human eyes. Besides, maybe they really did think I was dead. Maybe it was chaos and panic and bad luck. I'd rather believe that than the alternative. That's remarkably forgiving. She shrugged. Holding on to anger won't change anything. And honestly, if they hadn't left, I wouldn't have found the cubs. Wouldn't have been there when they needed someone. She smiled slightly. Maybe it was supposed to happen this way. We arrived at the conservation planet on schedule. The facility was state-of-the-art, with specialists who actually gasped when they saw all 47 cubs alive and healthy. The head conservationist, a Velmorian named Dr. Thex, kept scanning Davis like she was the rare specimen. "You kept them all alive," Dr. Thex breathed, her crystalline eyes wide. 3 cycles, injured, on a failing ship, and you kept them all alive. Do you understand how extraordinary that is? Davis looked uncomfortable with the praise. "I just did what anyone would do." "No," I interjected, surprising myself. "You did what humans do. You saw creatures in need and decided they mattered more than your own fear or pain. The transfer took hours. Each cub had to be documented, examined, and settled into their new habitat. Davis insisted on staying for all of it, saying goodbye to each one individually, whispering things I couldn't hear, but that made the cubs press against her one last time. Duchess was last. The silver cub who'd been first to trust, first to climb into Davis's lap. She chirped sadly, not understanding why her pack mother was leaving. "You're going to be okay," Davis told her, voice breaking. "You've got a whole life ahead of you. You're going to grow up strong and beautiful, and maybe someday you'll have cubs of your own." She kissed the top of Duchess's head. "Be good. Remember your manners. And don't eat anyone who doesn't deserve it." When we finally left the facility, Davis didn't cry. She stood at the observation window, watching the habitat disappear behind us, and simply smiled. "They'll be all right," she said, more to herself than to me. "So will you?" I replied. She laughed softly. Yeah, I will." Later, after Davis had been cleared medically and we'd arranged transport to get her back to human space, my crew gathered for an informal farewell. There were gifts, awkward speeches, and even Voss admitting that having a human in his galley hadn't been completely terrible. "You changed us," Mira said simply. "Showed us that compassion isn't weakness. And that baby predators are actually kind of cute," Kelix added. "Still can't believe I'm saying that." Davis hugged each of them, these aliens who'd become her unlikely family over 4 strange days. When she got to me, she paused. "Thank you for not leaving me there," she said. "For trusting me with them." "Thank you for reminding us why we do this job," I replied. "Why we answer distress beacons even when it seems hopeless." As her transport departed, Gurk rumbled thoughtfully beside me. "Humans are strange creatures, Captain." "Yes," I agreed, watching the ship disappear into the stars. "Strange, stubborn, impossibly caring creatures." I clicked my mandibles in what might have been a smile. The galaxy is better for having them. In my ready room, I began my report to command. It started simply: response to distress beacon, 1 human survivor recovered, 47 endangered KRYNTH cubs successfully delivered to conservation facility. But as I wrote, I added more. About courage, about compassion, about a young woman who'd turned a tragedy into 47 reasons to keep fighting, about why humanity, for all their chaos and unpredictability, might just be exactly what the galaxy needed. My communicator beeped. "A message from Dr. Thex. Duchess is settling in well. She keeps bringing me things, like she's trying to take care of me." Thought Davis would want to know. I forwarded it immediately, imagining the smile it would bring. Somewhere in the vast darkness of space, a human was heading home with a story no one would quite believe. And somewhere on a conservation planet, 47 cubs were learning to be the magnificent predators they were meant to be, carrying with them the love of the unlikely mother who'd refused to abandon them. The universe, I decided, had a strange sense of humor, but sometimes, just sometimes, it got things exactly right.